Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Deep Naked Thoughts. I am your host, Val. And with me today, I have the School for Growth. I got Ivan and Dr. Z. So, Dr. Z, let's start with you. How would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you for having us. For one thing, simply that Ivan and I are working together to attempt some means of improving, I think, the community of Las Cruces in particular, and if perhaps the chance presents itself beyond that. But I have spent the last 50 years in some serious attempt of helping people try to really get their act together, as it were, try to improve their lives. My professional career has been 30 years in the pastoral ministry, and then over the past 20 years, teaching philosophy at the community college here in Las Cruces. And so a combination of the two, and I like to remind people, at least from my perspective, that the world of theology and religion sort of says to me that it's the world of answers. Most every religion in the world suggests, at least, that they have the answer or the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And so for 30 years, that was my professional career. And when you're in something, sometimes it's a disadvantage because it blinds you to other things. And so subsequently, then, as I said, I've spent the last 20 plus years in the world of philosophy, which I would characterize as the world of answers.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough,
Questions. World of
questions, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, thank you. Questions. And interestingly enough, in retrospect, it seems that it's been very beneficial, at least to me, if not to anyone else, because now, whereas you can get stuck in the world of answers and disregard the world of questions, you can also get stuck in the world of questions, and philosophy sometimes resists the idea that there actually are answers. And so I think they complement one another rather than contradict each other. And so where I'm coming from these days is trying to understand those questions that are most fundamental to the human experience, and to try to test to see whether or not the answers really present themselves, and in fact they're, if the answers are universally applicable. That is to say, it's not just my idea or Ivan's idea, our idea, but do these apply to different cultures, to different people, to different individuals? And so for me, it's a matter of trying to just simply get to the fundamental questions and answers that are going to help people.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ivan, your turn.
It's kind of hard to follow up on so many years of experience and so much knowledge. But I think that's, I've known Dr. Z for at least 15 years now. And I was originally a student as one of his philosophy courses. And initially, I thought Dr. Z was a psychologist because, he works with people uh, on a like kind of counselor basis. And so I was really drawn though, like to the fountain of just knowledge that he has. And so sitting here today and in our work together, I served more as a, I was telling him before we started today's podcast about, I feel I'm more of in a supportive role, meaning that I feel like what we're doing now is kind of like his baby. But
Mm-hmm.
because of my foundation in psychology, as I'm a school psychologist and licensed counselor, I think that I help to bring more knowledge, but also he's made the point that I also bring like some like practical application, because a lot of my work in working with clients and young people and teachers and parents is, okay, this is happening, so how do we get from point A to point B? So a lot of my work, especially as a school psychologist, forced me to say, okay, this is what we can do, these are the sequential steps that we can take to get to where we want to be. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Z's knowledge and experience and my experience as a psychologist has kind of really uh, been something tremendous, I think, in the sense that we can really bridge two worlds and bring two things together. It's a fusion to help people, be the best version of themselves, whether it's personally or professionally. I think that that's something that we're doing together, and it's been really a joy, and it's always a constant, ongoing process because we're both very avid readers.
Mm-hmm.
So we're searching out questions to things. We're both kind of dedicating time to do that. We meet up and we discuss our findings. So it's also very exciting. We're always moving forward in our understanding of different things that we're looking answer to seek answers to. So that's kind of what I bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, like I said, it's been a joy, and I'm really excited about the work we're doing together right now.
Okay, good. So, we are gathered here today because we are, in one way or another, trying to help people. And we're trying to help people from different backgrounds, people that maybe are religious, maybe people that aren't religious, maybe people that are literate or illiterate. And so, what is your message and what is it grounded on? I know that it is heavily focused on love. And I think all of us want love, to be loved, or even love others. I think that's another reason why like pets are so important to us, because they give us unconditional love. They don't care if we got an A or if we went to work or didn't, or if we did a good job or didn't. But there is a big, deep foundation of love. So, how does love lead in your field?
I think that's probably getting to the very central issue with regard to what we're trying to do in the School for Personal and Professional Growth. We're going to be launching, as I mentioned, the definition and application of love community. And so, for your listeners, we like to try to get down to the foundations of ideas and concepts and problems, if you will. I don't think that it's necessarily good to try to treat symptoms. You have to get to the source. And so, for your readers, let me try to simply state it the way we understand it, and that is that life is primarily relational.
Mm-hmm.
We have personal relationships, we have professional relationships. A relationship is simply stated, I think, or defined as the interaction between individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question begs an answer: what is the best way for me to relate to other people?
Mm-hmm.
And we have concluded that the answer is love, the one word love. But immediately when you say that, everybody in the room is going to want to ask the question, what do you mean by the word love?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have, for the last 6 years, almost 6 years, tried to determine, is there a better, more comprehensive, more thorough definition of love than what you find in the first letter of Paul to the Corinthian church, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It actually begins in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 31, and then continues through the entire chapter of 1 Corinthians 13, all the way down to verse 13, actually. It's referred to many times as the love chapter. Many people have heard it at weddings. It's on greeting cards, those kinds of things. But if you take it and stop to really consider what it actually dictates, I've said at times it would take a person a lifetime to try to work through every one of the aspects of what that expanded and we think comprehensive definition of love would be. And so I don't want to quote the entire chapter, but just for your listeners to be reminded that the verses do declare that love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not arrogant, it does not dishonor others, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in deceit, but rejoices in the truth. Love always protects, trusts, hopes, endures. Love never ends. Those are verses 4 through 8, and in that chapter 13. And I mean, just those aspects of the concept of love. I have said, and Ivan and I are still sort of challenging people, and we'd love to hear from individuals. At some point, we'll give an email address, and they can email us if they like. We're challenging individuals to try to compose or relate a scenario in life, be it personal or professional, that some aspect of that definition, broad definition of love, doesn't somehow answer the questions that life poses. And as I mentioned before, that's not the entire chapter, and so there's expanded issues in that chapter that we allude to at times. So for us, it's a matter of, am I willing to seriously contemplate the possibility of, first of all, defining love, and then more importantly, perhaps, practicing it. And I don't know that, for your listeners, again, I don't know that I would suggest to anyone that it's possible to continually, consistently, and perfectly practice that broad definition of love.
Mm-hmm.
But just the fact that I would entertain the possibility that I could grow in my relationship with others by practicing love, I think that would be, for me, the issue. And that's what we're trying to do with regard to the definition application of love community, is meeting once a month and having presentation for about 45 minutes, and then opening it up to discussion questions for the last 45 minutes, and really get into the practical application of it all.
Okay, Ivan, your turn.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add, and it's something I mentioned last time, Val, is that we've at this point in the development of this idea is we ended up with a Christian based definition, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, as I was mentioned to you last time, we're not a religious organization per se.
Mm-hmm.
So we do look at different religions and philosophies and psychology and all these different branches of knowledge to try to expand our understanding of the idea of love and just knowledge in general that would help us to best assist people. And so I just wanted to clarify that because I think it's important. I think a lot of times, people here, they may believe that that we represent a specific organization ideas, and that's not quite the case. And the reason why I think that's worth mentioning is because people can be deterred if they feel that you represent just one specific organization. And so I wanted to just be clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to Dr. Z's point about challenging people to really take this message and apply it to their lives and how it's applicable, to almost all facets of things we encounter in life. Dr. Z has also kind of posed a question to myself and to other people about finding a more, if there is one out there as far as a definition of love, and a more expansive kind of definition to bring it to our attention, and really hoping to have the best understanding of what this means and helping people. So we're not resistant to change in that regard. We're open to having dialogue and conversations with people about, hey, you're presenting this idea or this approach, but how would you consider this? Or maybe this is a better approach. So I think in that regard, also, we're different when it comes to talking about ideas that may be religious in foundation or philosophical or psychological ideas. I mentioned that because also I think that, we're talking about ideas that are religious in origin. Sometimes there's a dogma attached to it, right? And so people often will say, well, that's just something we won't really question or get into that deeply. We want that and we welcome that. And so that's just one clarification that I wanted to add to this conversation.
Mm-hmm. I do want to talk about the word love and how you went about defining it, because you guys kind of answer that in your last statement, that love is patient, love is kind. How do you go about teaching others about love, especially people that have like a distorted view about it? Like love is controlling, or love demands this, or like love is about sacrifices. And like, how do you go about teaching people and coaching people who maybe have grown up with like a different form of love, or maybe an unhealthy form of love, or just I'm thinking of like abusive behavior, and it's like, oh, well, he's doing this because he loves me. Like, how do we actually teach love? I think there's this quote, I don't know, this might be in the Bible, but it's like, love thy neighbor like you love thyself. So how do you, because love starts from within. So if you don't love yourself, you're going to let others not love you. You're going to take disrespect and abusive behavior or fill in the blank. So, like, having a definition and teaching love, it's almost like teaching people how to love themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You've asked about 14 questions there.
I know.
And very important questions and very deep questions, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening very carefully to you. I think it's critically important, Val, to start with an agreed upon definition. If we're going to teach someone anything about anything in any category, you have to have an agreed upon definition. Ivan alluded to the fact that we've landed on 1 Corinthians 13 only because, and with my background, having been in Christianity, having been a Christian pastor for 30 years, it would be obvious to anyone paying attention that I would have some quote unquote bias towards that. And I can certainly appreciate that. But to your audience, and what we're dealing with ourselves, is what Ivan was alluding to, is we've seriously undertaken the possibility of trying to find a better definition than what you find in 1 Corinthians. Mm-hmm. So you start with the definition because, as you pointed out, love to one person may mean something entirely different to someone else. And so you have to begin with a definition and work from there outward. Your examples of people who think that love, for some reason, is possessive or controlling, or worse yet, abusive. I do this because I love you, and so they twisted or distorted the definition of love. As an example, the definition that we're affording begins by saying love is patient. So that's fundamental to the definition. So when we try to apply that in practical life, am I a patient person? Mm-hmm. I can tell you categorically, I'm one of the most impatient persons on the planet. I've always had a problem with impatience. So the definition that I've afforded, that I have personally accepted as being legitimate, challenges me to be patient. So for me, and this is, I think, critical also with regard to a lot of people's understanding of love, it's not so much an emotion as it is part of your volition. Volition being the power of will, that I choose, I consciously choose. And so I personally have to consciously choose to be patient rather than impatient. Mm-hmm. And so you begin to practice that sort of, because it's something that you can actually learn. It's a learned behavior. I can learn to be more patient. Or I can decide volitionally to say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be impatient. I don't care what you say. And so you start with a definition and then you work out from there, if you will. Ivan may have some stuff to add.
Yeah. So as far as the way in which we help people kind of grow in their love through our work, it looks very different depending on the needs of groups and organizations that we've been working for. So, for example, we recently finished a contract with a local charter school. So some of the work that we did there was presentations on emotional intelligence. So growing in their awareness of what that would look like, and growing also in their skills to, for example, to self-manage, growing in their understanding of who they are as people. And for that, we use like personality inventories. We offered individual counseling to the staff there. So I think in through that work, it really helps us to understand individuals and then tailor our support to meet their needs. So it can look very differently. Like I said, it can be whole group kind of support and sharing skills. all the way down to individual sessions where we're helping people work through their own difficulties. Because
Mhm.
as Dr. Z mentioned early on, when he was talking about how he views life as being, just kind of like, relational, and how people are relating kind of really has a tremendous effect on how their life overall is going, right? So it's hard to really separate those things. It's hard to really be successful in life, yet
Mhm.
have terrible relationships. Sooner or later, the individual will suffer and the people around them. And so a lot of our supports are geared at, as Dr. Z said, getting down to the core issues.
Mhm.
Because I think one mistake that organizations make, and Dr. Z has pointed this out several times in our work together, is they try to separate the individual, the personal from the professional. And
Mhm.
we've all been in work situations where that doesn't pan out that way. Sooner or
Mhm.
later, if you're having some sort of personal issues, problems, traumas, or what have you, they're going to manifest in the work environment. And so we
Mhm.
accept that. We accept that, and we know that it's happening, and we try to address it, as opposed to simply saying, that's your personal life. When you come here, you're a professional, and that's that. And that's absurd. That's just not reality. That's not life. And so that's the way in which we kind of address this idea of love and how we help people
Mhm.
grow. Because a lot of times, quite frankly, at least when it comes to the counseling side of things, you discover a lot of blockages to being able to love, right? Whether it's trauma or whether it's what have you, there's something that prevents people from, say, being more patient or more open, or even, as you said, maybe sometimes changing their psychology about accepting love. There's just a lot to it. But I would say, at least foundationally for me, and something that I observed in Dr. Z and talking to people, at least generally when we first meet someone and we're having these groups, is all questions are welcome, and we're
Mhm.
not deterred by even what would some may consider, a very dark question, or a very overwhelming scenario. Like we've heard a lot of things, Dr. Z especially, in all his years of work, and
Mhm.
so I don't think that we're necessarily overwhelmed by what people may say. And then I think in turn really helps people to open up and to know that we really are there to support them, as opposed to, a lot of times there's this idea that everyone's welcome, and that we can talk about anything. But there's a lot of, you find a lot of areas of discomfort, and we really try to really just be open and accept um, the ideas, but also the individuals who come to us for support.
Mhm. I'm thinking right now. So there's this quote, and it goes, "Every relationship starts with yourself." So, for example, if you're trying to build healthy habits, but you don't, you're lying to yourself, because even your brain's like, "Well, you said you were gonna eat healthy yesterday, and you didn't. You said you were gonna start that project yesterday, but you didn't." So then your brain, its own system, knows that it can't trust itself. And so then you walking around with like self-doubt and lack, because you don't even have follow through. So how do you teach self love, like when people come up to you and they're just confused and they don't believe in themselves, maybe they don't believe in love? Like, is there actionable coaching practices that you guys teach, and like what does that look like?
Can I answer this?
Mhm.
So in going back to what Dr. Z was mentioning about, we want to get to the core of things. I think that's something that we both agree on. Something that I think drives us to, once again, to look for answers and things like that. We're always looking for the root of it, of the cause, if you will, right?
Mhm.
So one thing that I think is crucial to the question of self love is, it has, I think, a lot to do with self awareness, right? I think that's the first part of it. Is, how do I relate to the world? How do I relate to myself? Because that's within itself, you'd be surprised as to how many people I've encountered, and I would include myself in this as well, of course, is not being aware of how my own feelings are playing out in the world, right? And how my own self image is playing out in the world. So one way in which we've gone about this practically is, we for example, about a month ago, we did a training at one of the daycares here, and the whole presentation was on attachment, right? Like the emotional relationship that we have with our primary caregivers. And so there was parents there was teachers there, and so the reason why we sought to touch on that topic is because that's that's the foundation
Mm-hmm.
of self love and of love for others, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a good exploration of what kind of things we've learned from our parents, I think that really gives us a lot of answers. And so, but I would say that's also can be a very intimidating place to go for various reasons, right? Some people have fantastic parents, supportive, all this. Other people, not so much. They've experienced a lot of pain at the hands of their parents, and so going there can be very difficult. But I think that's if someone is truly interested in kind of understanding where they're at with regard to self love,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a very good place to start because that's where we first are introduced to what a relationship looks like. Where we're introduced to how we feel when we're around other people that love us. So there's just a lot of wisdom to be gained from analyzing the relationships that we've had with our parents or caregivers in those early years.
Mm. What are some of the pushback that you guys get, or in terms of blending philosophy and psychology and religion and all of these sources of wisdom? Do you guys get pushback from the community or from people? Like, what does that actually look like? Because I see that you guys are coming from a really good place and rooted in a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom. And I mean, I think even like religious books offer a lot of that wisdom that is now like scientific. So what kind of pushback do you guys get in your field?
I think it's obvious, I think, in today's world, especially because we're so technologically focused. Most Americans are, by default, very scientific in their worldview, simply because after the scientific revolution came about, it really has encompassed the whole of the earth, uh, obviously, but also, more particularly, I think the United States and advanced cultures such as ourselves. So you're going to get, we're going to get pushback. When you mention theology, when you mention philosophy, when you mention science, and when you mention sociology, all of these disciplines have their, if you will, their followers. And let me try to explain it this way. I came from 30 years of professional ministry, pastoral ministry, and so someone would immediately, as I said earlier, easily and quite honestly, I think, conclude that, well, he's just all about religion or spirituality or something of that sort, right? Um, but what we're asking, and I love the title of your podcast, deep naked thought.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is because you find such little deep
Mm-hmm.
thought these days.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be rather superficial on the
Mm-hmm.
surface. Nobody wants to dig deep. Nobody wants to really look into the roots of reality and knowledge and truth and those kinds of things. The other part of your title, Naked, suggests to me at least uh, that in every society there seems to be these taboo notions, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't talk about that. We can't talk about naked things. Let's undress everything. Let's
Mm-hmm.
ask questions about everything. I have said and have been challenged at times in the classroom, for example, by saying, if you don't question everything, I don't think you've questioned anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just stop to think about something like that, particularly with regard to religious people, for example, most religious people have never seriously questioned their faith. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not suggesting that people discard their faith, reject their faith. I'm not suggesting anything other than as adults, we have to be willing to question things so that we can arrive at the foundational truths. And again, deep, naked truth. That is a beautiful way to approach any topic, anywhere, for any reason. And so for me, it's like, are we going to seriously try to consider the possibility? For example, is there an answer to the hatred, to the partisanship, to the divisiveness that is in our country today? I think there is. It's love. But don't for 1 minute pretend that that's going to be easy or that it's going to happen rapidly. Because as I said, if you take that broad definition and start to work with it, Ivan and I have been working with it for, as I say, at least 6 years. And I'm here to testify, if you will. As I said earlier, I'm one of the most impatient persons in the world, but I am incrementally growing in my patience. I'm becoming, quote unquote, a more loving person. And that's, of course, in my own opinion. But I will use my spouse, I will use my close friends. Ivan and I bounce ideas off each other. We really question this stuff, and we're trying to get down to, if you will, deep thought about some of these things. So for your listeners, it's not an easy exercise. Life is a difficult, someone has said life is a full contact sport. You better get a helmet. And so life is tough. And the answers that I think we need to arrive at may not be easy, and they may not come quickly.
Okay, Evan, what do you have to add?
I would say that, when you're presenting information to large groups, just statistically, right, there's going to be different personalities and different perceptions and values and things like that. So you naturally are going to get people who maybe aren't aligned with what you're presenting, which is fine. But I would say even within that, I would say that it's only been a small number of people who have demonstrated maybe pushback, if you will. I think that the most challenging part of taking all these disciplines and presenting them has been presenting them in a way that people can understand them, and helping people kind of make the connection between these ideas, because some of these ideas, I think they're fairly complex in some cases. And so I think Dr. Z and I always strive to present the information in a way that people are going to be able to understand it, and most importantly, apply it. So I would say that's probably, at least for my point of view, has been the more challenging part of taking all these different branches of knowledge and presenting them to people. But I think overall, when we get down to it and we're talking about relationships, it's like everyone can relate to that. Everyone can relate to having, say, maybe negative feelings towards a loved one, or having difficulty managing a relationship in the workspace. So even though these ideas can be, like I said, sometimes difficult to understand, when we get down to it, it's all relational. And so we're talking about relationships, and everyone can understand that. I mean, because not only can they understand it intellectually, but experientially, right? I mean, these things, we feel them, and we don't forget them. And so they're very important to people. So either way, we're able to kind of bring it back around and really make it helpful and useful for people.
Wow, I'm thinking a lot about what both you and Dr. Z said. Oh man, I need to gather my thoughts.
Sure.
But I'm thinking of blind obedience. So I question a lot. I question my Catholicism. I question the Bible, and not in a sense of why do we believe in God, or why is this book written, but more like, why was it written this way? Or because it's intentional. So what was the intent in this being written this way? For example, love thy enemy. I'm pretty sure that's in the Bible, right? But why would I love my enemy? Why would I wish them well? Why? So just instead of having like blind obedience or selective like cherry picking, like why was it written that way? Why does it say that? Because there are universal themes, like there's hunger, there's pain, there's sadness. That's a human experience. So I'm sure that even if other humans don't believe what I believe, they also experience hunger and they also experience pain. And equally, they can probably also experience joy and happiness and love. So then I'm thinking like, well, why was it written this way? Like, love thy neighbor. When I'm like, I hate that guy. So I don't know if there's like if you can reach people through universal themes or universal pains or feelings.
I love your questions, Val, because that's the sort of thing we're hoping to encourage with regard to these monthly meetings when we begin in September. But let's take one of your questions quite seriously. Why would anyone want to love their enemy? That is an absolutely radical statement. If you just simply stop to think about it, okay, let's do some deep naked thought on that concept for just a few moments. Those are the words of Jesus of Nazareth. Regardless of what you think of Jesus, regardless of what you think of Christianity, if you're scientifically inclined, then you're going to do an investigation. I have always loved science. I believe science, without science, we would have a very miserable existence. Okay. Science has afforded us incredible advancements, technologies, improved our lives stupendously. Okay. So I like the idea of investigation, the scientific method. You want to investigate things, right? So why would anyone want to love their enemy? Let's suppose for just a moment that your enemy represents. Let's talk a little bit of psychology, and our psychologist here, Ivan, will help us at this point. Let's talk a little bit about psychology, the idea of projection. We, as human beings, and this is a scientific fact, we project out onto the world things. We project out onto the world ideas. I project out onto people things that may be internally troubling me, but I don't want to deal with. So I project them out onto you. You become my enemy because I don't like that. But I'm not aware of the fact that the problem is internal, not external. So let's suppose for just a moment that just the concept of enemy, represents a projection of the things I don't like about myself. Oh, now I'm in trouble because I'm actually hating part of myself. I'm actually rejecting part of who I am. I'm actually projecting out onto you what's wrong with me. So, what better way to heal myself than to love my enemy? Conceptually, see? And then you move forward, in my opinion, practically and say, okay, so maybe I am projecting out onto Val the things I don't like about myself. Maybe I am projecting out onto people things that are wrong with me so that I don't have to deal with them. Am I ever going to be whole? Am I ever going to be healed? Am I ever going to be the best version of myself if I keep doing that? The answer is obvious to me. No, you're not. You're never going to grow up. You're going to continually do what you've been doing until or unless you start to cope with, if you will, the Jungian, Carl Jung concept of the shadow, the dark places in you that maybe need to be attended. So that's a possibility of answering your question. Why would anyone even think about loving their enemy? Does any of that make sense to you?
Not upfront. No.
Okay. Maybe Ivan can help us.
Okay, Ivan.
So you're looking for more clarification with regard to what Dr. Z's talking about?
Yeah, just lead us just on loving our enemy, like why we project, and maybe like why surface level just love your enemy sounds so upfront, like love your enemy, but when you have to like confront that, you're like, no, I don't like that person. I don't want to like that person.
Yeah,
Like,
and
how
I
do you
think that's
send
a
them
very
love?
natural. Yeah, I think that's a very natural reaction. And I think as far as because I think with some of these ideas, obviously you're moving into the spiritual realm, right? So psychology can take us a certain up to a certain point, and then it's spirituality, right? So I, I won't get too much into that part of it, but I think for me, like I had mentioned before, and a lot of this goes back to once again to self awareness, and I keep going back to that because um, I think that, and maybe this is more to do with living in modern society, or at least having a more comfortable life where we can actually have the time to self-reflect on what we do and why we do the things we do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think about, for example, my own family. They were all farm workers, and they were all doing heavy manual labor jobs, essentially surviving, right? Which has been the history of mankind. Is we've have had to just kind of work, and that was it, right? There's times now, for example, like at least with regard to us, we can sit down and contemplate and think about our lives, and why are we doing the things we're doing? Why are we engaging in these sorts of things? And so, with regard to what Dr. Z was talking about projection, that's a big part, I think, of self awareness, is saying, okay, if this person is really, for example, if I really have a lot of negative feelings towards this person, like where is that coming from? And
Mm-hmm.
what kind of effect is it having on me, and what kind of effect is it having on their life? Like, I think a lot of these things are oftentimes disregarded. And once again, it goes back to the point I made earlier, which is it's painful, it's hurtful, it's dark, it's all these different things that, quite honestly, many of us don't even want to even contemplate or feel, right? Because a lot of this
Mm-hmm.
is also feeling, right? Like, who wants to feel that deep burning anger towards you know whoever it is?
Mm-hmm.
People really don't want to sit there and do that. It's hard. It can be a very difficult and taxing thing. And so I think, but nonetheless, it's important work that needs to be done, because once again, we're talking about the definition of love, and Dr. Z made the point. Well, I'm not talking about a warm fuzzy feeling here, right? uh, I think that speaks to also the difference in what we're describing here,
Mm-hmm.
because I can say, for example, that I have a warm fuzzy feeling towards my brother or my mother, but yet maybe I don't treat them with patience and kindness and all this stuff like that. So what does it matter whether or not I have this warm fuzzy feeling if my treatment of them is poor?
Mm-hmm.
And I was having a conversation with my friend the other day about this idea of love, and he says I don't think I need to learn more about that. He said, because I know how to love. And then we got into more of that conversation. He was describing that he can feel the feeling, therefore there's no more work that needs to be done. But imagine if for example, a mother, father, or caregivers, providers, if they felt warm fuzzy feeling towards their children, but they didn't care for them, they didn't nurture them, they didn't provide for them, um, what would that look like? Well, as outsiders, will we really say that those people are loving this child? I mean, they have a
No.
warm fuzzy feeling, but the action isn't there. Like, is that love?
No. So then love is also an action.
Precisely.
Mm.
That's the so Dr. Z, and as we mentioned before, we have a lot of conversations. We also have a lot of debates, by the way.
Mm.
He'll bring an idea and I say, I don't agree with, and we'll get into that. Was one that we've kind of debated for a while, because it's like, I would say, and it's also probably related to personality too. Like
Mm-hmm.
at least my personality, like I'm very touchy feely, all this stuff like that. So I would say, like, wait, love is that, and I think I fundamentally still think it is that. But the
Mm-hmm.
crucial part of it all is, what am I doing, right? What
Mm.
am I doing out here in the world? Am I being kind and courteous and helpful and all these things to people in my life? um, I think that fundamentally, I agree with Dr. Zian with your comment of, like, it's action based, and I think that's why we go back to the definition. It's all actionable.
Yeah. Let me add something that I haven't mentioned yet, Val. And as I said, I've been playing with the idea and both the definition and application of love in a very serious way, at least from my perspective. But I've come up with a paragraph, and I'm going to quote it for you. And every single word in this paragraph, in my opinion, is essential to my understanding of what genuine love is. So here it goes. Anytime anyone voluntarily and honestly says no to self-interest and acts to ensure the well-being of another, they will transcend the ego, they will partake of the divine nature, and they will have demonstrated genuine love.
Mm-hmm.
It's in my opinion, a very, very dense, short, but dense paragraph. And as I said, it would take and may take the whole year of the meetings, definition, application of love community. It may take the entire year to unpack every one of those words because, as I said, I've worked on it. I've deleted things. I've revised things. I've run it by Ivan. We've all these different things, and it may still be revised so far as if there can be improvement. I'll be glad to improve on it. But if you take that seriously and ask questions about literally every single word in that simple paragraph, I think you will begin to comprehend, at least from our perspective, what genuine love is. And it, in fact, closes with the words, you will have demonstrated genuine love. But there are all those elements included. And if you look at it carefully, it includes psychology, it includes theology, it includes sociology, it includes psychology, all the different aspects. And I was having fun with it just the other day. So I asked AI, I quoted it for AI and then asked AI to critique it. And it was just incredibly interesting what AI, and regardless of what a person thinks about AI, some people are really hep on it and some people are rather suspicious of it. I think it's a tremendous tool, if nothing more, a tremendous tool. And it was incredibly enlightening to review the answer, and it was extensive, the answers that AI afforded me. Some of them were very positive and complimentary. Some of them were digging a little deeper, wanting a little more explanation. But I think that would help a person, perhaps if they are seriously thinking about what love is, what it means, how do we practice it. That includes, I think, a lot of the essence of what we're trying to do.
Hmm. Do you think it's just easier to like just have a barrier or a wall and just hate versus actually feeling like the discomfort or like the actual like pain? I'm gonna use myself for as an example. I used to have a friend and I felt very used by this friend, and the friendship ended, and I felt like, were you even my friend or did you just need my resources? And so for me, it's easier to just put up a wall, put up a front, and be like, I don't like you. I don't want you near me. I don't want to talk to you. Get away from me. I don't want to look at you. I don't want to say I hate you, but I dislike you quite a lot. It's easier for me to create a huge barrier than feel the feelings of like, was this even real? Did you even care about me? Were you even my friend? And so on one end, I feel like love your enemy is kind of like addressing maybe the discomfort versus hating your enemy. It's like, I'm not even going to deal with you. So do you think it's just easier, like an easier emotion to just hate versus like, oh, there's a human being in front of me with emotions and feelings, and they're going through survival, and they're imperfect, and like they like, does that make sense? It's like almost like going into the shadow self, because it's like they're human like I'm human, and maybe this person took advantage of me and I still have to love them.
I think, yeah, this is the sort of thing, Val, that delights me with regard to the possibility of working with people at this level, because you've just made yourself somewhat vulnerable. You've given to your audience and to Ivan and I a glimpse into your personal and private life. And so I will answer and then afford Ivan an opportunity to answer as well. I do think, I do think that it's easier to hate than to love. There's no question in my mind about that. Okay. So you are correct in saying maybe we just hate because it's easier. Okay. So let's for a moment take it apart, because obviously this person pained you, caused you pain, hurt you deeply. Uh, Part of that definition I quoted earlier. Let's recall part of it where it says, "Love keeps no record of wrongs." Okay. That Greek term is an accounting term. An accountant would be familiar with that Greek term. When an accountant does an accounting, they do debits, liability, if you will, and assets. And that term is literally translated: if you love, you don't keep a record of liabilities where people have hurt you, where people have uh, done you wrong. Okay. How hard is that?
It's really hard.
How hard is that for you to be willing to say, you know what? They hurt me deeply, but I'm not going to put that on the ledger. I'm not going to willfully and deliberately remember that. Now, immediately, if you're anything like any other human being I've ever worked with, including myself, something inside of you reacts even sometimes vehemently and says, hell no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hate them. I'm going to hurt them. I'm going to inflict as much pain as I can upon them. Those are the kind of natural feelings that arise, and that's why I say, without hesitation, it's a whole lot easier to hate people than to love them. So, what begins at that point, and this is what I mean by deep. Okay, so we're back to your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
deep naked thought. Okay, so we're going deep here. What does it mean to actually love this person? It would mean that you would have to wrestle within your own soul, if I may use that term,
Mm-hmm.
and say to yourself, I am going to deliberately not. And the first step for me is I am not going to hate them. It's like baby steps when I take a client through with regard to this issue of hating someone. Am I going to not hate them? The whole idea has to do, in my opinion, with forgiveness. I
Mm-hmm.
will not keep a record of wrongs. I am going to somehow come to a place of forgiveness. And for me, there's another word picture there, because the most often used word, for example, in the Greek New Testament for forgiveness, is a nautical term. When you go to harbor a ship, you tie it to the harbor, you
Mm-hmm.
tie it to the dock.
Mm-hmm.
That word is the word used in the Greek New Testament, which means untie it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it paints an incredibly powerful and I think productive picture. Forgiveness is about just untying it. I can't move the ship. I don't have the power to move the ship.
Mm-hmm.
I think what spiritually happens when we decide to quote unquote forgive, literally, we untie it, because you've heard people say, let it go. Just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
They're alluding to the same Greek concept of the word in the New Testament that says, untie it, let it go. And one day you wake up and guess what? The tide has taken that ship out to sea and you can't even see it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's one, I think, very real possibility of what forgiveness means. But before I give Ivan an opportunity to speak to that whole issue, I don't want anyone, including yourself and your listeners, to think, number one, that forgiveness is easy. That is a ridiculous concept. But number two, forgiveness doesn't mean I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
I contend that if a person has hurt you deeply enough that forgiveness would be required, you may never forget what they did, but you can let it go. You can forgive. So I've had people that say, but I can't forget. I said, I don't think you can forget.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's even healthy to forget.
Mm-hmm.
Ivan, want to add some?
Yeah. So, I think we're talking about like paradoxical things here, and talking about like loving our enemies and things like that. Well, here's another paradoxical kind of idea, and once again, Dr. Z presented this to me, and I've been thinking about it and applying it, and I think there's some truth there, and so when someone hurts us. We disconnect from them, right? We're protecting ourselves. Right? At the root of it, we're protecting. They've hurt us. We don't want to be hurt anymore. Naturally, we pull away, right? Which is totally understandable, totally practical, evolutionarily aligned, right? With survival, and so naturally we pull everything back, and so this is where the paradoxical piece comes in. So Dr. Ziad said, I don't have to, and correct me if I'm not getting this quite right, but he said you don't have to like someone to love them. And in my mind, I'm like, that makes no sense, right? And it goes back, I think, to this idea of if I don't feel it, then I can move forward with the actionable part of it, which is treating them with respect and dignity and all sort of thing, right? So, but if I were to remove the feeling part and just, so this is a psychological piece of it too, right? So it's like a lot of times when we're trying to change our behavior, many times we're trying to first change our thought and about it or our feeling. Like I first need to get my mind and my feelings right in order to behave in a loving way to this person. And sometimes that's not the best way to go about it because the feelings and the thoughts are so strong that they deter us from taking action that we might otherwise take. Right. So we take this approach of and this definition of saying, I don't have to like this person to love them. Then I could behave in a way that I want to behave. So, for example, speaking about personal stuff, you, as Dr. Z pointed out, and I think he's right, is that you're vulnerable and telling us about your personal life. I'll share a little bit about my own. So when my partner, who's now my wife, when we got together, she had a daughter, my stepdaughter. And so when I, being a young man that I was very impatient and not as helpful as I could be in the role of father, provider, caregiver, all these different things, right? So my mom told me, she said, if you love her, my wife, you also have to love your stepdaughter, right? But my heart and my mind wasn't really aligned with what I thought love should feel like, right? This is a new person in my life. But I thought to myself, well, how does one behave when they love someone? Well, they sit there, they listen to them, they get to know them, they take interest in the things that they're interested in, they're helpful. So I started doing all those things. I started behaving as someone would behave who's in love with someone, who loves someone, right? And over time, guess what happened? We built a very beautiful relationship, right? And so I think that like I said, it's paradoxical, but if you break it down to its application, there's a psychological foundation there, which is, for the technical part, is like cognitive behavioral therapy. You change your thinking or you change your behavior, but you can get in that loop somehow where you're behaving in a way that is more consistent, conducive to maybe what you want. So in the case of your friend, you don't have to like them, like the emotional piece that doesn't have to be there. But surely if you see them, hi, how are you? That sort of thing. I think that can be a very good place to start, especially when we have very strong feelings and emotions.
Let me expand a bit, if I may, because Ivan reminded me that I had said that to him, and his reaction wasn't immediately positive. You don't have to like someone to love them. And that immediately, or for most people, is counterintuitive. It's paradoxical. It's nonsense. It's not even real. Let me challenge you, Val, and Ivan again, myself, and your listeners. Anyone who's had children will understand that sometimes you don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't like them,
Mm-hmm.
but you still love them.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who's been in a serious long term relationship, if they're honest, will say, I believe, that sometimes you don't like that person, but you can still choose to love them. That's why, for me, genuine love is not so much an emotion as it is volition. Now, follow me for just a minute, because I do think that genuine love creates and elicits powerful emotion. If I'm patient with you, if I'm kind to you, if I do not dishonor you, if I'm not easily angered when I'm with you, if I keep no record of wrongs, that's going to elicit incredible, powerful emotion from you.
Mm-hmm.
So they're closely related. But the initial thing is, Ivan was talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. When I change the way I think, then ultimately my actions will change, and those will result in some very positive outcomes. So if I decide, no, I'm going to be patient, even though I don't like this person, what ultimately happens through my actions, first of all, my thoughts, is that relationship, in fact, improves.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, and it's not. None of this is easy in the sense that it's you can put it on a bumper sticker and everybody will understand it, and that's why again, and I'm not just paying lip service, because I thought about this many times. The title of your podcast, deep naked thought, uh, folks. Do you really want to figure some stuff out, or are you just playing games? And what I'm suggesting, and what I think Ivan and I are in agreement about most of the time, is it's going to take some really, really hard work on our part individually. And then collectively, hopefully, Las Cruces will become a more loving community if we really wrestle with some of these deep, sort of hard, difficult, emotional, relational questions.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was very deep on the personal level. Um, how do we change the world now then? That's funny. I guess we just change an individual at a time.
Well, I think at least this is my perspective. You start with yourself. Imagine, Val,
Mm-hmm.
that you would come to a place. You didn't mention a name. I don't want a name. You don't need to say a name.
Mm-hmm.
That's what confidentiality and privacy in our own hearts is all about. But you imagine that you would come to a place in your life experience, where this person who has hurt you very deeply, would come to the place in your psychological, emotional, spiritual life where you would ultimately be able to honestly, remember my definition, anytime anyone honestly and voluntarily,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So imagine that you would come to a place in your personal life where you would honestly be able to say, and here's a phrase that I don't think I've used yet: to love another person is to desire their well being, that they would be well,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means. Because I don't always know what it means for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it means for any particular person. Only God may know that. But your well being, imagine that you could actually come to a place where you would honestly be able to say to yourself, when you think of this person again at some point in the not too distant future, I really would desire her well being. Ivan alluded to the fact that when we hate others, when we're in that mindset, not only does it distress us, it causes, I think, detriment to others. primarily to ourselves, because there's, this is this, as it were, a poison in ourselves when we hate others, I think. But also, I think there is something to this idea or notion of that we send out vibes, to use a modern term. I think there's something about the spiritual dimension that suggests that we're connected in ways that we don't fully comprehend, and that if I wish for you not well-being, but destruction, devastation, distress, I think there's something to that, and that it has an effect, a real living effect on the other individual. So that's, for me, it's like, this is real stuff. It's hard stuff. It's deep stuff. But boy, the rewards are astronomically good.
I'm thinking of like the expression of like people getting under your skin. And I guess for me, like the goal is like when I hear this person's name, that it won't get under my skin. Like I don't want to have the feeling of being oh, like don't bring up that person. Don't. Why are you talking about this person? Like instead of feeling that awkward, like electric feeling under my skin of like I don't want to think about this person. I don't want to think about this pain. I don't want to think about how this person made me feel. I do want to wish them well, and instead of feeling that under the skin, just be like, "Oh, I hope they're doing well." Or like, "Oh, good for them." Or like, "That's amazing. I'm glad that they're doing better."
You want
Yeah.
to take a crack at how do I get
Well-
over someone getting under my skin?
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to add is, we're providing kind of like general ideas, and we're, tackling on quite a bit here, right? We're trying to explain what we're doing, and also like touching on some specific things people can do to just feel better and be better, right? One thing I wanted to add, Val, also is that, when people have reoccurrent thoughts and feelings, and they're hard to escape, I would say, being a representative of the field of mental health, I would say that that's also a good point to say, in talking about self-awareness, to say, you know what, I may need maybe professional help to get through this, right? To
Okay.
be able to make sense of this, and to be able to move forward. And so I would say, for yourself and for your listeners, is saying, if these things are persistent, and if you're having a hard time kind of moving forward, I would say seek out mental health support. I mean, that's something that I think is extremely valuable, and can definitely be something that is life changing. And it's doing that hard work, right? Being able to tap back into those, because a lot of times in my work as a counselor and a school psychologist, you meet people who are, say, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 40 years down the road from the initial experience, and yet they're still feeling that. They still have not processed that pain. So in some cases, especially if the wound is there still, sometimes you just have to go back to that, and you have to make sense of it, and you have to uh, not only process it, but also have a different narrative with it. Because a lot of times, what happens when we're hurt, we develop this story, and there's this narrative about what happened that a lot of times is unhelpful, and it's not as accurate as it could be. So going back to that, and making sense of it in a way that is helpful, is sometimes just simply necessary. So I want to say that I think is a great and extraordinary contribution the psychology has provided to humanity. That is providing people a space to be able to talk about the things that have happened, make sense of it, so they can move on. Because otherwise, people stay stuck in there a lot longer than maybe they just shouldn't have to stay there. If there's tools there that can help them move past it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Moving beyond just relationships and our relationship with ourselves, can love help us guide or like help us understand what we're meant to do in this life? or like I'm trying to follow this quote in my personal life, and it's from love, not for love. So I'm doing this podcast from love. Like I want to share these conversations from love. Like I'm not doing it to get famous. I'm not doing it to get paid. I would love that though. But I'm not doing it for like a specific goal or followers or whatever. I'm doing it because I'm genuinely curious about people and the way they think and the way they move through life. So I'm doing it from a place of love, not for love. I'm not doing it to impress anyone or make my parents proud. But does can love help us get to maybe where we're supposed to be in life? Like I've heard a lot of people say like don't follow your passion or be practical or what can make you a lot of money or what are you good at? But I've not really heard like what do you love? Like is that good advice to follow for people that are maybe trying to understand what their purpose is in this life? Like does God or philosophy or psychology even like speak on that? Like, how do you find your purpose?
I think listening to you, you have begun what I would call the process of self discovery, deep self discovery. When you say something like, I'm not doing this for love, but from love. I mean, if you just stop to think about that for just a moment, you have moved from the exterior world, what I call the temporal sphere, to the internal, which I contend is the eternal sphere, the spiritual as opposed to the temporal, or the eternal as opposed to the temporal. When you ask about motive, why am I doing this? You're saying, I'm not doing it for love, I'm doing it from love. And then you went through a litany of things that you said, I'm not adverse to making money, but I'm not doing it so that I can make money. And so you're going through this whole litany or list, if you will, of things that you've considered, and you're personally probing your motives. That's what I call the internal world. That's what is about. That's psychology. That's, if you will, the deepest part of our being. Uh, from a spiritual perspective, I do think that lends itself to the concept of the soul or the deepest part of your being, whichever phrase you want to use at that point. But what you're doing is you're probing yourself. And when for me, you ask, is that going to be helpful to find my life's vocation? Is that going to help me find ultimate happiness? I mean, you're asking existential questions, you're asking philosophical questions, you're asking theological questions. All of that is, for me, an indication that an individual has come to the point in their life, in my opinion, a very healthy place, where they're probing these questions. And in my opinion, you will find the answers. I'll give you an example. You said a minute ago, I would like to get to the place where maybe when I heard this girl's name, this lady's name, it didn't get under my skin.
Mm-hmm.
The very fact, in my opinion, the very fact that you have said that voluntarily, you said, I didn't say it, you said it.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to get to that place. I think that energy follows intention.
Mm-hmm.
Your intent is to get to a place where she doesn't get under your skin anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You have just taken the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And don't underestimate the tiny little steps, the incremental little progress that we make in the direction of where we want to end up. I think we actually do, to some greater or lesser degree, determine our own destiny. That goes to career, that goes to, am I ultimately going to be happy? It goes to all those philosophical, theological, and somewhat spiritual questions. But you're off to a great start because that's your intent. What is your intent? you've already said it with regard to that personal experience and relationship. So I would love to get back from you sometime a note or a message or an email or a text that says, "Hey, by the way, it seems to be working.
Mm,
My energy is following my intent."
mm. Evan, what do you got?
So I can't speak too much about kind of the way in which we go about finding our calling, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that because, we all have different personalities,
Mm-hmm.
and we have different traits, and because we have different, there's just variability there. Some people are just better suited for different careers. So I think that's definitely something that should be considered. For me personally, I kind of just stumbled upon I was kind of, once again, going back to moving around blindly and seeking out different things and answers. I stumbled upon school psychology, thankfully, because I feel that I'm good for it and I'm aligned to it. But I don't know. Like I said, a lot of that was kind of, um, I went about that haphazardly, just kind of figuring things out. But what I can speak to, and I think this is important, and at least I think it's been fulfilling for me, is that I have sought to in this process of getting to know myself and growing in a skill and in a knowledge base. I think that the most fulfilling thing for me has been learning all of this stuff and then just giving it away when I can.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that because part of this training is actual skills like counseling, assessment, all this stuff like that, right? And there's been time in my life now that I have had this training and people have come to me and said, you know what, I need help in this or that. And if I see a window of opportunity where I can use my knowledge, my skill, my passion to benefit them, I'm going to give it to them. I'm just going to give it to them. And I think that has been very fulfilling. So I would say, maybe I don't know how you would use this to get to where you want to be, but I would say that for those who are where they want to be, give it away.
Mm-hmm.
Give it away wherever you can, because I think that all these gifts that we have can be given away and they could really benefit people's lives. So that would be the only thing I would have to say about that.
Mm. I do have a quick question, and this might sound extremely like woo woo or like just hocus pocus, but do you guys believe in energy? Like, I'm trying to give examples, but maybe you think of someone and they call you, or like you think of someone and all of a sudden, like they send you a message. I'm trying to think like even women and their cycle, like they tend to sync. There's groupthink. There's like us versus them. I feel like there's just like a lot of examples of just like energy, or whenever you can feel energy through a song. Like there's angry music and there's happy music, and you can tell when somebody's upset by their tone, by their voice. You can tell when somebody's in a good mood or a bad mood. Sometimes like they call it like a bus kill or like a party pooper. Like, oh, that person's energy just like made everybody's mood go down. So is there something to say about energy, maybe that the gospel speaks to, or maybe other verses or texts or psychology? And like, can we raise our frequency or our energy? Like, is there any of that in the text?
You you have an uncanny ability to ask very serious, deep questions, and a bunch at a time.
Yeah.
So you've asked, but you're asking a fundamental question, and I'll try to answer it, and then Ivan as well. I mean, if you just take the concept of energy from a scientific perspective, energy cannot be created nor can it be destroyed. That's a scientific definition. Okay, so there's something that exists that can't be created and can't be destroyed. So it just exists. Okay, and it's referred to as energy.
Mm-hmm.
there's all kinds of forms of energy. Okay, there's electrical energy, there's gravitational energy. You've alluded to different kinds of energy as well, with regard to relationships, for example. So the reality of it is there. I think spirituality, there is no spiritual tradition in my understanding that denies that there is this thing called energy. Sometimes they refer to it as the spirit, the wind, the power, the force. Okay. So there are all these different terms that are used with regard to this concept, if you will, general concept of energy. But without question, I believe that energy exists, that we don't completely comprehend it. Science has done a marvelous job of harnessing types of energy. I mentioned electrical energy so that we can have more comfortable lives and all that sort of stuff. But you're referring to something more fundamental, I think, and that is there energy between people? Does energy connect us? Are we energetically somehow one thing? And you're asking, again, philosophical and theological questions at that point. And I think, unfortunately, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, after having been in the world of religion for 30 years and now out of it for 20 plus, religion does, in my opinion, a rather poor job in the West with regard to the concept of energy, spirit, connection, all those kinds of things. Because unfortunately, religion becomes very dogmatic. That's a word that Ivan used earlier, which I think bears repeating and really needs some scrutiny. But for me, be an empiricist. By that, I simply mean investigate, experiment, run your own experiments. Ask yourself, okay, so this is what happened. Why did it happen? I'm going to investigate how it happened, when it happened, how often it happens, and see if there's not a pattern here. Mm-hmm. See if there's not something actually going on here. Mm-hmm. Why can't we all be scientists? Mm-hmm. I think spirituality, in fact, is very real. We don't completely understand it, but we can, I think, get a better handle on it if we're a little bit more disciplined in the way that we view it, experience it, define it, and express it.
I would also, maybe Dr. Zivi could touch on a little bit about intuition, because I think Val's also talking about, how we sometimes maybe have these reactions toward people. And so what is that all about? And I know your definition of intuition is good to speak on. So maybe you can talk about that.
Thanks for reminding me. So there are three basic ways that human beings learn intellectually. Mm-hmm. That's basically the function, if you will, of understanding academic or abstract concepts, the faculty, if you will, of understanding abstract or academic theory. Intuition is the ability to know something without any conscious reasoning. I failed to mention that in the first definition. The way we learn intellectually is the faculty of reasoning and understanding. That's the technical definition, okay? Reasoning and understanding. Intuition, the ability to know something without the need for conscious reasoning. Those are completely juxtaposed. Those two definitions just said there's one way to know things, and then there's a completely opposite way of knowing things. One is through reasoning, one is non-reasoning. What's that all about? And science, spiritualists, philosophers, psychologists have, we're still not agreed on ultimately what intuition is. C.G. Jung believed that there is the unconscious and the collective unconscious, which means human beings know things intuitively as a species from the beginning of the species until now. In other words, it's like animals. They have instinct. Who taught geese to fly south in the winter. We say, well, that's instinct. Okay, I understand that, but explain that to me. What is that? How does that work? Now, I believe that Jung is correct in saying we have a collective unconscious, that we know things as a species, that is, Homo sapiens. We know things as a species that we didn't learn at school. It's not part of our reasoning. Someone says, I just felt something in my gut. And intuition is more an emotion than it is intellectual. There's no question about that, in my opinion. And so, what is that? And how does that work? And can I improve that? And can I rely on that? So I mentioned intellect, intuition, and the third way we learn is experience, practical contact with or observation of facts and or feelings. So it seems that for me, at least, experience is the arbiter that helps us decide, should I lean toward my intellect or should I lean toward my intuition? Experience teaches us that. And that's where I get off into the whole concept of wisdom, because I think wisdom is, in fact, the ability not only to have knowledge, but how to use it. And that only comes through experience.
Wow.
Does that help any?
Yeah, I'm going to take notes after this podcast and know whether or not I'm using like my intellect, like my brain, my problem solving, or if I'm using my intuition and how to align the two, because I think that's important. And then, yeah, just experience. Experience is hard because sometimes you win with experience or sometimes you lose and you're just like, dang, I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, we never forget.
Yeah.
One little side note I wanted to make about intuition is, naturally the work that I do professionally has colored my world. And so I'm always thinking about people's needs and considering questions like through the lens of like trauma and things like that, because, a lot of the people that I work with have experienced significant traumas. So one thing that I would say about intuition, this is for the listeners, maybe there's some of them will vibe with this or will understand it, is our intuition is it's a survival tool, right? We rely on it a lot to make decisions that are split second, and we need, and in those cases, our survival depends on it, our livelihood depends on it. And so for people who have had been exposed to chronic stress, like say, for example, they're growing up, their children, their parents, or they live in an abusive home, things like that. Over time, people are going to assess and think that there's danger where there really isn't any danger, because, they've learned to survive. And so naturally this alarm keeps on going off. So you have like this kind of like false positive, right? You think there's something going on when there isn't. And so the reason I mention this is because for people like that, they're going to have a lot of strong somatic physical sensations a lot of the time. And so for a person like that, it would be important for them to try to understand and maybe also like just really scrutinize their response, because it could lead them in a lot of directions that are counterproductive, right? For someone who's maybe has more of a healthier nervous system, their intuition, they could maybe trust it a bit more. But for someone whose alarm is constantly going off, they may be a bit more inclined to say, wait, I got to tap into my reason a little bit here and really assess the situation, because I'm having this strong response when in reality there's not much going on here. So just a little side note for people, like I said, who may have experienced significant trauma, may have those strong reactions.
I have another question. Dr. Z, get ready. But I'm thinking of love and moving through the world with love. And I don't know if, I know I've read this in scripture. I have it somewhere in my Bible, but I think it's when Joseph goes and gets the 10 Commandments, when he tells them, when they ask your name, what do I tell them? And he tells them, tell them that I am the great I am. I am the great I am. And it's something along the lines of like, anytime you say I am, you're declaring it to God. Like, I am happy, or I am lazy, or I am fill in the blank. And it's supposed to be like, anytime you say I am, you're declaring it to God. So can I brainwash myself? Like, using I'm trying to merge psychology and scripture. And like, can I hypnotize or brainwash myself and like tell myself that I am all these great things, even if I'm not there yet? Like, I am a great speaker. I am a great podcaster. I am a great conversationalist. Like, can I move through God, or can I use faith through move through the world to achieve my purpose? Because sometimes I feel like they're disconnected. Like, I'm moving through the world, and maybe that's my reasoning, like my cerebral, or like, I forgot what you call intellectual reasoning of like, oh, I should do this. This would be a great outcome, versus like, well, what does your soul think you should do? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense if I'm hearing you correctly, Val. One tidbit of information so that your listeners don't think I'm a complete hack. You said when Joseph got the Ten Commandments, it was actually Moses.
Moses.
And the episode that you're referring to is when Moses goes aside and sees the burning bush,
Mhm.
and a voice speaks out of the bush and says, "Take off your sandals, for the ground you stand on is holy ground." Um, People can easily and quickly and almost humorously dismiss that as, oh yeah, all right. So a bush is burning and it doesn't burn up, and there's a voice in the bush. And so this is like really, really, really ridiculous. What's so unfortunate, in my opinion, and I'm going to go to the heart of your question, with regard to biblical interpretation, is that so few people, again, let's go back to your podcast, Deep Naked Thought. What is that story about? Is that just absolute nonsense? And a lot of people dismiss the Bible as absolute nonsense, or the Quran, or the Hindu sacred writings, or the writings of Buddha, or the writings of Confucius. I read them all. I study them. There's a message. They're trying to say something. Okay. So here it is. And so ultimately, Moses asks, "Who are you?" If I go to try to get the Egyptians, I'm sorry, the Jews out of Egypt, they're going to ask me who sent me. I need a name. So according to the story, you are correct in saying that God said, "I am that I am." It's called in theology the tetragrammatron, big long term, which simply means there were four consonants. The reason we don't quote unquote know that name is because ancient Hebrew doesn't have vowels. It only has consonants. And so it's YHWH. Okay. But the literal translation is "I am that I am." Okay. So when you go to it and you say to me, is there something to maybe merging psychology, theology, and I am a good speaker, I am a good podcaster, I am a great person, I am, and so I'm employing that phrase "I am." I can see where people might go with that, and I'm not going to completely deny that possibility. But what I'm going to try to help you do right now is understand what I believe the message was. If you try to say, so if there is a God, the question for me is not so much who is God, but what is God? So God says to Moses, "I am that I am." There's a particular theologian, his name is Paul Tillich, who concluded that God is the ground of all being, based on the phrase that you just used, "I am that I am." So everything that has being is part of God, because God is the ground of being. So when you say, yes.
So I'm thinking a lot about the Bible and that we're all made in his image. So if I am made in the image of God, then that means that some part of my being is also related to God. Like maybe God is in me too. Or like at least I'm made of his image. So are we all godly, or are we all, I'm not really sure what I'm asking, but is God with me or in me?
I'm pretty sure I understand what you're asking, and the answer is unequivocally yes. If we are made in the image of God,
Mm-hmm.
then we are like God in some regard.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
What Paul Tillich was saying is that God is the ground of all being. Everything that exists is part of God. And we don't need to go into all the different types of theology. There's a particular term and segment of theology that goes off kind of on a tangent there. But to your point, yes, we are like God. Yes, there is something about us that is God-like. The great quest of the religious traditions of the world is nothing less, nothing more than trying to figure out what that means. If you want to boil it down to its essence, which means what? If we are like God, then how are we like God? What part of that is me? How can I cultivate that? That's what a religious tradition does. People say, well, I am not into organized religion and all that. And I understand all that. I believe me, I understand it, I think, more deeply than some. But when you talk about a religious tradition, all you're talking about is, what is a tradition? In my opinion, a tradition is a habit that was successful. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a tradition. I mean, you can talk about food that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do some traditions have this food, this tradition has that food? Because it works for them.
Mm-hmm.
A tradition is nothing more than either an experiment or something that happened that was successful. So a religious tradition, be it Roman Catholic or Protestant or Buddhist or Taoist, is just a tradition that grew up where people tried to figure out the spiritual dimension, came to some conclusions that worked, actually worked. So it proceeds. Things that don't work don't become traditions. People say, well, let's start a new tradition. Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not that easy to start. You know, people say, well, you know, it's nothing, it's not different than let's start a new business. Okay, great. Go for it. It's hard. You go through. So for me, it's unreasonable, it's unkind, it's dismissive to say of religious traditions, for example, oh, they're nonsense. No, sorry. Uh, uh, if you look at the Chinese traditions, 6,000 years old, you're going to tell me that that's nonsense?
Mm-hmm.
Things that have survived for 6,000 years? Name me something in the world that has survived for 6,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll show you a tradition. I'll show you something that has some legitimacy. So, to your point, is there something to me saying the term I am? I'm going to be very philosophical, very theological right here for Val.
Mm-hmm.
And the listeners can tune out if they like. What if Val comes to the point where she's thinking, when I use the phrase I am, I'm actually thinking in terms of I'm like God. I am like God. So that term I am, that I exist, that I have being, really connects me to the concept of God. And every time I use it, I'm going to be reminded of that. And I'm going to start this sort of, you used the word brainwashing. And yes, there is a sense in which if we practice, and that's what a religious practice is, right? Something that we do over and over again because we want to. It's voluntary, it's not mandatory. and you keep saying that to yourself, and it connects you to the concept of God, that God is being, the ground of being, then in my opinion, in a very, very real, practical, spiritual way, you are exercising a spiritual practice that, in my opinion, will afford you, who knows what it might afford you. You might have all kinds of revelations, understanding, intuitions. It may change the way your intellect behaves at times, and your experience in life, in my opinion, again, will be enhanced.
Mm. Wow. Joseph, Ivan, do you have anything?
No, this is where Dr. Z's expertise shines through, and I just sit back and I keep on learning from him. So
Yeah.
no comments.
So I guess I'll open up a little bit more, but sometimes it feels hard when you're doing things alone, and I have to think or remind myself, like, well, if I'm made in God's image, I'm never alone. Or like, if I have a little piece of God in me, like if He's in all of us, then there's just like a little piece, maybe a 1% or 2% that's going to carry me through this. And it's like I'm not completely all alone, if that makes sense. So I guess maybe it's like a source of like strength of like, man, you gotta do all this work, Val, but there's that little 2%, that like 2% spark or magic or like piece of God in you that like is gonna carry you through this, if that makes sense.
It makes absolute perfect sense to me. And in my opinion, you are on solid ground to say to yourself, maybe it's just a fraction of a percentage, whatever. Okay. But it's there and it's in me, it's part of me. All I need to do is enhance it, encourage it, understand it, all those kinds of things, right? Because interestingly enough, and I'll quit at this point. Jesus was once asked, "When is the kingdom of God going to come?" And he said, "The kingdom of God is not going to come by way of observation. You're not going to be able to see the kingdom of God." People think it's going to be a political kingdom. It's going to be, they're going to overthrow the Romans at the time. And that was their concept of the kingdom of God coming on earth. Jesus said, nope, that's not how it works. And it's found, by the way, in Luke chapter 17, verse 20. It's not coming by observation, for the kingdom of God is within you. It's inside you. Okay. If you just take that concept and continue with regard to what you've been thinking about, so we're like God. Not only are we like God, according to the teaching of Jesus, the kingdom of God is within you. And there, for me, I've always been intrigued by psychology. I'm admittedly a spiritualist. And so for me, that opens up an entire universe of possibilities with regard to, as you pointed out, we are never alone. I am never alone. If there is any reality to that possibility. And that's, for me, the very foundation of faith. What do I believe? You can believe that there's something there, or you can say, I don't believe that there's something there. And that's fine. I can't prove it. That's the thing about spiritual reality is you can't, it doesn't lend itself to empirical proof. But there are evidences, and I think some of them are rather obvious. But I think you're on the right track, Val. Keep it up.
Okay. I've taken a lot of your guys' time and asked a lot of crazy questions, all in trying to relate it back to love. But what have I not asked? Or what did you want to say about love and how we're moving through the world and maybe how it can help heal us? Because I don't know, are we very divided right now? I'm watching a lot of soccer and I feel like we're very united in the World Cup. We're all united in one goal, which is the World Cup. Just kidding. But what did I maybe miss or maybe not ask? Or what message do you have for the audience in regards to love and healing, and what our creator, or maybe if they don't believe in a creator, maybe yourself, your psychology can help you achieve or do?
I wanted to say something that's maybe more closely aligned with the comment you had made earlier about, being from love, not, you said not for love.
Yes.
Yes. And so that this theme, I think, if I'm perceiving what you're declaring there correctly, this theme is coming about in my life, and it's coming about now. So I just wanted to kind of share this, and obviously it's relational and it's about love. So all this time we've been talking about how we go about loving others, right? What kind of actions can we take? What kind of psychologies does it take to be able to bear the pain and to bear all the difficulties that come about when we're in a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in looking at what you mentioned before, I would say the last thing I would say about love is also, while it's highly important and it's our mission, if you will, to try to help people be more connected, I would also say it's equally important also to accept the love that you have in your life, that many times we kind of set out on doing. But if there is an abundance of love in your life, and if people are trying to help you, allow them to do that. I think for many different reasons, people kind of, either because maybe we're highly independent, or because we've been hurt, we don't allow people to kind of come in and take care of us also. But I would say there's nothing wrong with that, a lot of times, because, and I think here you see kind of a remnant of sacrifice and of religion is saying, I'm giving it all away and not expecting anything in return. Well, that's all fine and great, and I think that's something that's worth striving for.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also points in our life where it'll be where we're the ones that are in need of care, and to say that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I deserve this. That's also totally fine and human.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I will close, Val, with I was thinking your listeners might, conclude, well, these guys, they used a lot of spiritual talk and they used the Bible and the talk about God and all this sort of stuff. What I'd like to say to listeners, and just in general, because this is what we're actually about, and Ivan alluded to it earlier, it's not about a particular religious tradition ultimately. It's not about even spirituality ultimately. For example, they can go and look up the book. Title is The Good Life. Harvard University has spent almost 90 years studying what makes for a good life. And they published the book, The Good Life, just a few years ago. And they're into their fourth director of this study at Harvard. And they have followed individuals for almost 90 years. Most of the participants obviously are dead. They have a few that are still alive. And they've been following them and interviewing them at intervals on a scientifically based calendar, if you will, to find out what made for a good life. And the introduction to the book has an incredibly interesting question. And this is the question: if you had to make one decision today to ensure your future well being and happiness, what would it be? And the answer of the book declares healthy relationships. Okay. So they have concluded, Harvard University has concluded scientifically that if you want a quote unquote good life, and that for them it meant health and happiness, then you need healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking and we argue that the best way to relate to others is genuine love. And if you read the book, and there are other books, we didn't mention some of the other books. I mean, there are a number of books that are on the shelves these days with regard to the concept of quote unquote caring for one another. That they're a little reticent about using the word love because honestly, it's such a sloppy word unless you define it precisely. But in closing, I would say here's a book from Harvard University, a study that's gone on for 90 years, and they've concluded that if you want a healthy and happy life, then you need healthy relationships. Go there and start there and see if that doesn't make sense and help you in your personal and professional life.
Wow. I want to thank both of you for that powerful conversation, for entertaining all of my crazy questions, and just for all of the knowledge that you have gathered and acquired and brought to us. And what is the School for Growth, and how can people find you? How can people reach you? What services do you offer? And like, where are you in the community?
For your listeners, the web address is www.theschoolforgrowthnm.com. But our email address is theschoolforgrowth@gmail.com. And they can email us. Please do email us, Val, yourself. And don't forget us if you want us back on your podcast sometime.
Yes.
Develop 29 more questions. I know you can do that probably in short order. And we'll be glad to discuss, and maybe even particular issues that your listeners would have if they care to email you or us and say, hey, what about this? What about that? And let's see whether or not this concept of love is really applicable, as we argue, to the personal and professional lives that we live every single day.
Okay. What, Ivan? Okay, come on, Ivan.
No, I don't have anything else to add. I think Dr. Z captured the essence of what we're getting at, and we would love to offer practical support. So as Dr. Z mentioned, if people have specific questions, they can email us, and we can set up a time to talk to them. So as you can tell, we love chatting about the things that we're passionate about, and we're always learning. So if we can help you then and there, we'll definitely work on it and get back to you. So we're of service to the people. So thank you for this time. We appreciate it.
All right. Well, that is everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.